Okay, thanks. Yeah, I always have to get outfitted with technology. You know, it's sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's really good to see everyone here today. I guess what you could say is that this is a rather nice seat, although you get the better view. Because this is the first time, if I remember correctly, this might be the first time I've given a talk with Vajradhara behind me. And it's an amazing experience to be in the room, just period. Being in the room, period, is a good feeling. And I hope that all of you have had an opportunity to sit for a little while with our friend and absorb some of the blessings that are inherent in a room like this. So where I'd like to start today is with intention. How do enlightened beings come about? People often ask me about this. How is it that enlightened beings even exist? How do they happen? You know, and it starts with intention. Making the intention to meditate for the benefit of others. Making the intention to serve others. Making the intention to create more stability for yourself and for others. These intentions that we make are what come to fruition in our actions, in our thoughts, and in our words. But it all starts with the mind. The Buddha's teaching, the collection of the Buddha's teachings called the Dhammapada begins with the words, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world." And this means that if we want to affect change in our lives, if we want to be a source of strength, not just for ourselves but for other people, it all starts with our mind and working with our mind. Since our mind is determining whether we're happy or sad, the Buddha said if you want to work with cultivating the causes of happiness and decreasing the causes of suffering, you work with the mind. And that is why when he gave his teachings on how to attain the same, we're having a swap out here. Hang on a second. Hold that thought. Okay, there you go. There you go. All right, we have, what is it? We have liftoff. Okay. I hope that's a little more helpful. I said to myself, hey, you know, that sound system's working pretty well. Anyway, so I didn't even think about it. It's okay. So we're talking about how when the Buddha gave his initial teachings, he emphasize the mind's role in our happiness and sadness, and that depending on what we are experiencing with our mind, this happiness and sadness arises within the mind, based on our habits of the past and our habits of the present and so on. And so that means that the mind is supreme. The mind is what tells the body and the speech what to do. And so if we want to affect change in our life and to become a source of strength for other people, we have to change our mind. And so it's with that thought in mind that we often begin our talk sessions here with a statement of intention. And our intention is right here on the page that you've got in front of you, with the word refuge, refuge prayer. We're going to recite this in English twice, and then I'm going to sing it once in Tibetan so you can hear how it sounds. And so you can think that you put your intention in this talk. See, because I'm the one who's speaking, but you're the ones who are listening, and so your intention matters too. Yeah, your intention is important, and your intention matters too. So this way we have a shared intention for today. So we'll start with the words in the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Okay, and now we'll recite it in Tibetan. O sanje chudang soji chonamla chang chu pardu dani kyap suji daji chinso jibe sunam ki drola penshir sanje Okay, thanks. And I'll recite a short prayer of my own, and then we'll begin. Oh, Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche, Dagi Chiwar Pede Den Chula, Kadrin Jembo Gane Je Sunte. Kusum tugging a drip sal to soul. Okay, thanks. So we're talking. We started by talking about working with the mind, and I'm not sure if you had a chance today to sit in this room and meditate together. But if you were part of the group that was meditating in here this morning, you'll know that it's a kind of a nice place to sit. It has a good grounded feel to it. It feels good. It feels good to sit here. It feels grounding to sit here. And I remember my teacher, the founder of our center, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, said, the reason it's important to sit is because our mind can be like a ball placed on a table. That when that ball is placed on a flat table, he said it has a tendency to roll. He said, so when we sit in meditation, what we do is we place our attention on an object, and maybe it's the breath, maybe it's a sound, maybe it's something we see. But by placing our attention on that object, we are training our mind, we are training our attention to stay with the object. And when the attention wanders off of the object, we notice and carefully bring our attention back to the object over and over and over again. And he said this helps us because our mind is usually very changeable and movable, like that ball placed on a table. It has a tendency to roll. He said when we meditate, he said it's like we put flat bottoms on our thoughts so that they don't roll. And I love that analogy. The idea is that when we keep returning again and again and again to the object of meditation and let go of all of the thoughts that arise in our mind while we are meditating, when we do that over and over again, we are training our mind to be clearer and calmer. Less reactive, more calm, less reactive. And that's what he meant, I think, when he said that meditation puts a flat bottom on those thoughts so they no longer roll. Anywho, I like to talk about meditation in the meditation hall because it's I guess you could say it's a subtle encouragement to me and to everyone to just keep coming back to the breath, keep coming back to this place, keep coming back to the community and sitting together, which is a very powerful thing. I will try to remember at the near the end of this talk, we're going to do a sitting retreat here in this room on the summer solstice, which is coming up on a Saturday in June. It's just going to be sitting practices, sitting and walking meditation and short talks. It should be a good event, and you can come to little of it or give yourself a gift and come to all of it. In any case, the practice of meditation is where we start our path to Buddhahood. Now, our path to Buddhahood supposedly ends there, when we all become Buddhas. That's the idea. That's what the Buddha said. The Buddha said he denied being God. He said, I'm not a God or the God. I'm none of those. I'm not that. And they said, well, are you an ordinary person? He said, I'm an enlightened person, meaning that he came to an understanding of the nature of his mind and the nature of all reality. And by the way, the answer that he came up with is that the nature of mind and the nature of reality are the same. And that's, I guess you would call that mind-blowing information. But for a lot of us, it's just theoretical. Because after all, we've spent so many years in classes, in school, learning about the scientific basis of reality, of what we call reality. And we might think, well, did the Buddha agree with modern science? And the answer is, sort of, yeah. Because the Buddha said that all things are made from parts, and all of those parts break down little by little by little by little, meaning that everything that is made of matter slowly decays and falls apart, which interestingly enough is the second law of thermodynamics. Everything that comes together falls apart. So this interdependence, things being existing in a relative way for a set duration of time, impermanent, a set impermanent duration of time, and in a set way, interdependently. That is how everything is. But the mind of an individual, he said, it has a core to it that is permanent and uncreated. Permanent and uncreated. So the Buddha said that from his experience in enlightenment, from his perch or his vantage point, when he became spiritually awakened, what did he see when he became spiritually awakened? He saw that the nature of mind and the nature of phenomena were the same, and that they were all impermanent and interdependent. And this allowed him to relax with everything that happened. He was always in a relaxed state of mind because he knew that at the ultimate level, everything was fine. Not us. We're not like that. We have, right now, we have things that are fine and things that are not fine. I don't know about you, but I got things that are fine and things that are not fine. And that's why I meditate, so that I can even out the fine and the not fine things and be okay with the fine and the not fine things. So this is what the Buddha said was our nature. He said, no one created us. We've always existed from the no beginning of time and always will exist to the no ending of time. But that we evolve spiritually depending on what we practice and what we put into our mind. In other words, the habits that we form create how we experience the world, which is why meditators experience things differently. Not necessarily better, just different. And this is why our path begins with meditation. But the end of the path is Buddhahood. And many people think, well, what happens to turn an ordinary being into a Buddha? And of course, the answer is the same answer that is given to the question, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the answer is practice, practice, practice.
And so if we practice meditation and practice love and compassion and practice wisdom, if we practice all of those things, we too can become Buddhas. I jokingly call that the good news of Buddhism, is that we all have the capacity to awaken to our own nature. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because my topic today concerns a person, giving a biography of a person who never lived. I used to be a newspaper reporter, so I knew how to write interesting headlines. The reporters almost never write their own headlines. The headlines get written by editors and either agree or disagree with the writer's intention. It's a point of contention sometimes in newsrooms. The headline or the first line of something may not match with the writer's vision. But anyway, when I was writing headlines, I enjoyed writing headlines that made people think and made people want to read the story. So I figured if I say I am going to talk about the life story of Vajradhara, you might go, ho hum. I'm bored. Ho hum, who's that? But if I say I am going to give you the biography of a person who never lived, now that's interesting. Because the whole idea of a biography is to tell the life of somebody who lived, so how can I give the biography of someone who never lived? That's weird. So hopefully this will be a point of curiosity for you. But in the end, it's a description of the path to Buddhahood. The person who never lived is depicted on the throne behind me. And this is going to be the first of a series of talks that we will be giving about the images that you see on our shrine. I thought it would be interesting, since we now have this amazing shrine that was essentially designed by our founding teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. He's the one who chose the three main statues, the three large statues that you see here, and he also recommended how they be displayed. And he also chose the 6 statues, 3 on each side of Vajradhara, that are in the vertical cabinets on either side of Vajradhara. He picked those out as well. And so he had already suggested the design for this shrine before he passed away by buying these statues for us. And he filled the 6 lineage masters himself, but the 3 big ones we had to do. So I am going to give you the biography of a person who never lived, Vajradhara. If you look up, if you actually Google, and I did it for fun, the biography of Vajradhara, you'll get quite an interesting selection in the AI review. And it's actually quite good. Actually, it's quite accurate. And what it says is that Vajradhara, this being who is depicted behind me, sitting in the lotus posture with his left hand toward his heart and his right hand in front of his left, holding in his right hand a symbol called a Vajra, which is symbolic of indestructibility. Indestructibility. And in his left hand toward his heart, he's holding a bell, which symbolizes wisdom. So if you put these two together, indestructible wisdom, you kind of get an idea of the biography of this person who never lived. And in fact, this indestructibility that he holds in his right hand is symbolic of skill, of the skill of an enlightened being. And the bell is symbolic of the wisdom. If you dive deeply into the iconography websites where the art historians tell you what these symbols mean, the art historians say that the left hand, which is associated with the feminine, associated with the feminine aspect of being, is held close to the heart, symbolizing the supremacy of wisdom. And then the right hand, which symbolizes the masculine aspect, is crossed over it. And the idea is that these two together imply mastery of these two qualities, wisdom and skill. And the art historians say it also symbolizes the unity of wisdom and compassion. And so this person who never lived is an indestructible example of the unity of wisdom and compassion that we all possess within us. He is the flowering of all of our positive qualities and the annihilation of all of our negativities and obstacles. And this is why you could say, in a way, he is a human Vajra, depicted in this indestructibleness, depicted in human form. And so how do we see this person, and why do we see this person if he never lived? Because virtually every other being depicted in these cabinets actually lived somewhere, sometime, and had a life story somewhere, sometime, but not Vajradhara. And the reason is that it goes back to something that a story my dad told me. My dad was an old AA guy, and you know, some of those guys, they have good stories. And he talked about a little child. He said, I heard this story about a little child praying. And they were praying at night to God, and their mother was next to them. And as the little child was praying, they turned to their mother and gave the mother a hug. And they said, but aren't you going to finish your prayers to God? And the child said, oh yes, but sometimes you need someone who has skin on. The idea is that the mother was providing a reassurance for the child who needed to have the presence of the mother in order to feel confident and safe. So the idea is that sometimes enlightenment, or God, if you will, is an abstract concept that seems beyond us. But humanity, another person just like us, we can relate to that. We can relate to another human being. And I think that this is why, in iconography, this figure of primordial wisdom, because that's the other quality that Vajradhara represents, primordial wisdom that is beyond time, primordial wisdom that is the nature of all things. This primordial wisdom is symbolized in a human form by Vajradhara. Because the word Vajra means that scepter, that indestructible scepter. And Dhara means a person who holds this indestructible scepter. So you see here, Vajra holder is who this is. And according, again, to our friends, the art historians, these figures are very old. This figure of Vajradhara is very, very old. It's been around for a very, very long time, as long as Buddhism has been around in India. In fact, Vajradhara is said to be the source of all of the teachings that the Buddha Shakyamuni gave in a set of literature called the Tantras. During the Buddha's life, he taught sutras. The word sutra means essentially the words of the Buddha. So that's the first of the Buddhist scriptures, are the actual words of the Buddha. And he also taught the Vinaya, or Vinaya, which is the book of monastic discipline for all of his monastic followers, how they should behave and conduct themselves. And then finally, he gave a teachings called the Abhidharma, which is his teachings on cosmology and how the world came to be and so on. And but then there was one more set of literature. There's two more sets of literature that he has attributed that is attributed to the Buddha, the historic Buddha Shakyamuni. One is the Mahayana Sutras, which were first given in the 3rd century by the great Indian master Nagarjuna, and then the Tantras, which arose around the same time. And all of them talked about wisdom and skillful means, meditation, love, compassion, wisdom, how to develop all of those things. And the Tantras in particular were interesting because they emphasized the Buddha nature inside every individual and taught how to nurture and come into contact and to realize and bring to fruition one's Buddha nature. And one of the methods given for this is something called guru, which means teacher, guru yoga, which means practice, the practice of the teacher or the practice of the master. And Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught a very simplified version of this, and I'll be teaching it here in just a few minutes so that you can see how it works. But the idea is that the nature of Vajradhara is Buddha. The nature of your mind is Buddha. And you remember when I was talking a couple of weeks ago about the tuning forks analogy, people who use tuning forks to tune musical instruments? If you have two that are tuned to the same note, you strike one and hold it next to the other, it begins to vibrate in sympathy, sympathetic vibration. So this is why meditating on the forms of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas brings us to an understanding of and a subtle relationship with our own Buddha nature. And by doing this practice over and over again, we get more confident that we have a basic nature of Buddha. And so that is the function of Vajradhara. He gave all of these teachings through the Buddha Shakyamuni. So basic awakening has always been part of humanity, but we haven't seen it. And that's why we need reminders like statues and shrines and shrine rooms in order to recognize it. It reminds us, oh yes, I have something that I need to work on. It's like a very big reminder of something we need to work on, right? So hopefully it'll be a happy reminder to us of our own potential. As you know, a couple weeks ago when I talked about why Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche chose Vajradhara, I said that he did not, to my knowledge, tell anyone why he picked Vajradhara for our main Buddha image. So I said that means it's a mystery, and because it's a mystery, we all get to guess. We all get to guess what his reason was, and my guess was that he wanted everyone who came into this room to see the nature of their mind symbolically right there on the platform in front of them, to see that there's not much difference between the Buddha there and the Buddha here, and to feel it on a person-to-person, so to speak, level. That's my guess. And I think it's a pretty good guess, but might not be the answer. So in any case, going back to the life story of this person who never lived, since he's been around since the beginning of Buddhism, seen in various forms, he comes into play with these 6 individuals that you will hear about in the coming weeks. These 6 individuals who were the earliest disciples of the tradition that we represent, called the Maha Mudra tradition of meditation. Maha means great, Mudra means like the seal of authenticity on a document, the Great Seal. These 6 individuals, their stories will slowly be told over the next few weeks, and you'll find out who they all were. But the first of these is depicted in the upper cabinet. It will be to your left, is that correct? Am I pointing to your left? Okay, great, I got it right for once. The upper cabinet is a depiction of Tilopa, the first Indian guru of Mahamudra. And when he worked on his meditation, he meditated very deeply and became an enlightened being, and the Buddha Shakyamuni appeared to him in a vision and taught him essential and succinct and short instructions on how to meditate on the nature of mind. And that's why Vajradhara is considered to be both the goal of our practice and the method of our practice, which I just think is a fascinating idea. Vajradhara is the goal in that he's Buddhahood, and the method in that it has to do with our own Buddha nature. So after having appeared to Tilopa, Tilopa then became the Vajradhara and pointed out the nature of Naropa's mind. He's at the top on your right, and then back and forth. Naropa became the guru of Marpa, the Tibetan teacher, and then Marpa became the guru of Milarepa, and Milarepa became the guru of Gampopa, and Gampopa became the guru of the first Karmapa, Dusam Khenpo. And so it kind of ping-pongs back and forth in time. So that's a little bit about the life story of someone who never lived. That Vajradhara never lived, but has always been there, in that he represents the basic wisdom, compassion, and goodness of every individual that can be attained through the practices of Mahamudra and other forms of meditation. So he keeps appearing and reappearing, so to speak, through the teaching of one generation, spiritual generation, to the next generation of spiritual practitioners. And so this lineage is truly alive. If you think about it, these 6 individuals had life stories, and although archaeological evidence doesn't exactly talk about them, it is highly likely, the historians say it is highly likely that they did exist, and that they, especially the ones that are getting closer in time to us, like Marpa and Milarepa. So they lived in the 900s, 1000s of the Common Era. So when we get into the BC time, we have a little bit of trouble, but when we get into the AD time, we're pretty good. So I think I'll stop here for a second, and then I'll teach you this little form of Guru Yoga that Khenpo Rinpoche taught in a very similar, but much smaller shrine room of Columbus KTC's. When we were first established in 1977, we bounced around from house to house. The KTC Shrine was in somebody's house, and then they had to move, so it went to somebody else's house, and then they moved, and it had to go to somebody else's house. I think we were in a series of like 4 or 5 houses in the first 2 years of our existence. First 3 years of our existence. Had to be, at least 4. So we were in a house up in the campus area, and Khenpo Rinpoche was going to teach us Mahamudra. He was going to give his very first Mahamudra instructions. And it was in somebody's house. We were all having lunch, and he said, he turned to me and he said, so like, have you received the instructions on the preliminaries for Mahamudra? And I'm like, no, I had to work that day. And he said, oh, well, let's go do it now. And this was how he was. He said, well, let's go do it now. Like, after dessert, please. Anyway, we all repaired to this tiny shrine room where there was a small image of the Buddha and a small altar. And he could tell we were all bouncing off the walls because, we were all excited. We were new to all of this, and, woo, and so forth. So he gave us an exercise to calm us down a bit. And I can give you this exercise, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. So it starts, you can close your eyes and use your imagination. And you can either, and so what you're going to imagine is that in front of you and slightly above you in space is the Buddha. You can see the Buddha in any of the forms you know him in. As a monk sitting and touching the earth with his right hand, with his left hand in his lap. Or you can even see the Buddha Vajradhara. Whatever it is, you know that it is an enlightened being, and you know that this enlightened being cares for you and wants to give you a blessing. Then, after you've imagined this Buddha, completely made of light and empty inside, he's not solid like a statue or solid like a human being of flesh and blood. He's made completely of light. And this is how Rinpoche described it to us. He said, imagine that this figure is made of beautiful light. It's golden light because his skin is dark. And it's like shining like gold. Now, in your heart, he said, make an aspiration and supplicate the Buddha. Ask the Buddha to give you a blessing. And you can think that you're asking the Buddha to bless you and to help you remove all of your obstacles and obscurations and give you all goodness. So you've now asked the Buddha for his blessing. Then Rinpoche said, imagine that golden light pours off of the body of the Buddha. This golden light, which is all of his wisdom and all of his compassion, shines upon you. And that as that light shines upon you, it removes all of your obstacles, all of your worries, all of your anger and negativity, that it's all washed away by this golden light. And then the Buddha dissolves into a cloud of light and merges with you through the top of your head and comes to rest in your heart. And then you think, my mind and the Buddha's mind have become one. Like water being poured into water. And then you rest in the confidence of that. So that's a short meditation on Guru Yoga. The reason I like to teach this is because it was something that Rinpoche taught to us. And he said you can do it whenever you're feeling worried or upset or just things aren't going the way you want them to go. And you're feeling out of sorts and you want a blessing. So you can ask for the Buddha to give you that blessing. And the merging of the two, isn't that interesting? The idea that the nature of the Buddha's mind is enlightenment and the nature of your mind is enlightenment. And it stands to reason that the two could mix. And that in itself is a form of Mahamudra meditation. And this is how many of the great masters of the past have actually cultivated the causes for awakening. So I think that's a lot. So maybe we should stop there and have a discussion. What do you think? Would if you have comments or questions or you're curious about something, yeah. We have 2 question microphones, one on the right, one on the left. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I was wondering if you could speak to the Eightfold Path, like how that fits into, enlightenment and where we're going with that.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you bringing up the Eightfold Path because last week, or was it week before, we talked about the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha's main teaching, and so what he did was, what the Buddha did was he basically said, do no harm, practice virtue, and tame your mind. This quotation goes all the way back to the Buddha himself. And then it wasn't until later, I'm not quite sure what century it was, But there was a Buddhist king, and this Buddhist king was trying to figure out a way to teach Buddhism to people in a quick, succinct way. And it was the king who was part of the devising of the Eightfold Noble Path as eight numbered sections. But it really came down to the 4 statements made by the Buddha, which is do no harm, practice virtue, and tame your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha, which is a summary, and it just means there is no other. Don't look any farther. Because that's the older statement of the 4 Noble Truths. Do no harm, practice virtue, tame your mind. And you can really see how one leads to the other. Now, I have to call up the list of the Eightfold Path because I don't have it memorized. The Tibetans usually, when they talk about the Eightfold Path, they talk about it in terms of what qualities a person achieves when they become a Buddha. That the Eightfold Path is a path, but it's also a description of the fruition of Buddhahood. It only becomes really perfect when a person becomes a Buddha. So it's like you train in it, but then you perfect it. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So do no harm means, don't hurt yourself and don't hurt others, because that's a cause of suffering. The Buddha, in his teaching on karma, said if you harm another person, then you will suffer. Or if you harm yourself, you will bring suffering upon yourself. And then he also said, if you are generous with, kind, and loving toward others, or generous, kind, and loving toward yourself, then that's cultivating happiness. So that's really the most basic teaching of the Buddha gave on karma. And that's also in the first chapter of the book of Buddhist sayings, the Dhammapada. If we think, speak, and act with an impure mind, suffering follows us. And if we think, speak, and act with a pure mind, happiness follows us. And so I think it's really important to think, speak, and act out of goodness rather than out of selfishness, because that was the other break point. What's the break point between virtuous action and non-virtuous action? Non-virtuous action is selfish and cruel and unkind. And generous action and kind action is the virtuous action. And so how do you know the difference between, how do we know the difference between things that will cause harm and things that will help? That's where meditation comes in. If we don't tame our minds, we're always going to be like a pot of boiling water, going around and around and around, not really knowing what to do. And so when we meditate, we let our mind calm down so we can clearly see what actions bring about happiness and clearly see what actions bring about suffering, and avoid the suffering and cultivate the happy ones. But I think I still have the list here. Right thought, the Eightfold Noble Path consists of perfect thought, perfect speech. Let's see what else is next. Action, perfect action. Perfect livelihood. Perfect effort. And then perfect memory. And then finally, perfect meditation. So, the idea then is if we cultivate these 8 qualities, then Buddhahood is the result. But becoming a Buddha, those 8 qualities are then themselves rendered perfect.
So it's kind of like a circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you asking about that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And hi, yeah.
Thanks, Lama Kathy.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to me how these talks track so well with questions I have in my own practice.
It's been like that for me too. Whenever I go to a Dharma talk, there's usually something that like I really want to hear.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot lately about mind and the nature of mind.
Yeah.
And you spoke briefly early on in the talk about sort of, does this align with modern science and things? And so my question is about like mind and neurodivergence. So, I get that the nature of mind is the same between all of us
Right.
and the Buddha. And, I know that as Westerners, we're really quick to equate mind with brain,
Right.
which is not the same, or like
it.
psychological mind. So I have that like intellectual understanding. But in the case of like neurodivergence, where your brain is in one way or another structured differently, different processing,
Right.
I don't disbelieve that the nature of mind is
Yeah.
different, or no, I don't. I
That
believe
it-
it's the same, but I'm
that
wondering.
the same, yeah.
I'm wondering just how that plays out, and if you could, I don't know, maybe point me in the right direction in terms of thinking about these.
Yeah, I really do appreciate this question because I think that as people who grew up learning science and learning about the brain and learning about everything, that how the world manifests and how the laws of everything, what are the laws of physics and laws of chemistry and so on. And I think we appreciate the fact that the Dalai Lama said one time, if science and Buddhism ever disagree, Buddhism will have to change itself to meet science, which I just really find that fascinating. And then my own teacher said, one time he was asked about science, and he says, I'm not sure because I don't stay on top of these things. He said, but it looks like Western science has pretty much mapped out all of the phenomenal world, all of the relative truth of the phenomenal world, how things work, how things appear and how things work. He said, but they have made like zero progress on understanding the nature of mind. I think as close as we get now are the studies that are being done about consciousness and the nature of consciousness. That's really fascinating. But anyway, that's a general talk about science. Now, to your question, this human being that we are, this human being that we are, is sometimes called the fully ripened result of all of our previous karma. Okay, and so yeah, there will be divergence sometimes in physicality. Okay, and that divergence in physicality may have an impact on how we experience ourselves and our mind, how we formulate the idea of self, how we formulate the idea of mind, will be dependent upon our physicality, meaning how the brain is structured. And so neurodivergence has been around forever. I don't think there's ever been a time when human beings didn't experience it in some way or other. And I think virtually everyone has some form of it going on. And because we all are incredibly different. So my teacher was asked about, here's what he said. He was asked not about neurodivergence per se, okay, but he was asked about dementia in particular. The question was, when a person becomes enlightened, can they still develop like brain problems? And his feeling was that yes, the answer was yes, but no. And he said he wasn't 100% sure about the whole thing, but he said his feeling about it was that yes, the brain is like the seat for what we call consciousness, but it's not the seat for the mind of the individual, that stream of being that the Buddha talked about going through time, that was never born and will never die. It just goes through a series of life. He didn't call it a spirit, he didn't call it a soul, he didn't call it an entity, he called it a stream of being that manifests in this body because of the circumstances. Okay, so while physicality may impact how unenlightened beings in particular experience their minds and their self-concept, that will definitely affect people, the physicality in the brain. But for an enlightened being, he said, technically it wouldn't matter. It would not matter, that enlightenment would still be the predominant aspect of that person, right? And they would still be able to function, even if they had a brain disease, because they had enlightenment. That's his theory. I can't say that it's ever been tested, but what I like about his theory is that it takes into consideration that we're all different, and that as unenlightened beings, yes, our physicality and our brain will have an impact on our capacity to practice Dharma, and our capacity to practice meditation, and our capacity to really attain Buddhahood. It could be affected. But in a way, for an enlightened being, the physicality doesn't matter. I ain't been there, so I can't tell you. I don't know, does that make things better for your question or worse for your question?
No, it makes sense to me, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, right now we've got equipment that works. Even if it's a little divergent, we all have that, right, to a little bit. I mean, even if our equipment's a little bit divergent, we've been able to get this far, which I think is pretty good. And if we continuously put into our mental thinking matrix, whatever you want to call this thing, as long as we put into our consciousness these positive aspects, love, compassion, generosity, and so forth, and an attempt to understand the wisdom nature of all things, then as long as we keep working along that path, I think we're gonna be all right regardless of what's going on in the brain. I hope so.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. There's time for one or two more. Is there one or two more? That's amazing, Well, then I guess that means that we get out of school early today. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you about this biography of a person who never lived, and to talk about the unborn and undying nature of our minds, symbolized by this figure of Vajradhara, the unborn and undying nature of mind that took this form, out of compassion, and gave teachings to Tilopa, and all those teachings are still passed down from teacher to student in an unbroken line through oral teachings. That's how the highest teachings of Mahamudra are imparted still today. That's why the name of this lineage is Ka-Ju, K-A-G-Y-U. G-Y-U, Gyu means lineage, and Ka means, it's actually the word for word. It's the word for word. It's also the first letter of the Tibetan alphabet, which means word. And it means it's the teachings of the word of the Buddha, which come to us through this lineage of great masters. So let's gather together all the goodness that we've accomplished and dedicate it. If you've been to one of Eric Weinberg's talks, he likes to talk about good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Good in the beginning means you start with a pure aspiration. Good in the middle means you try and maintain that aspiration no matter what's going on. And at the end, good in the end means you dedicate the goodness to the benefit of all beings. We'll just recite this dedication in English. Okay, starting with the words by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. All right, thanks everyone. Thank you for coming, and look forward to seeing you next week. Be safe out there. Om Mani Padme Hum.